watching.
Hello, dears. Welcome back to Fear Tells. Today we have 3 terrifying Skinwalker stories that will make you think twice before looking into the darkness. So dim your lights, put on your headphones, and let's begin. I was driving home late from work that night. The road cuts through forest for about 40 miles, nothing but darkness and trees on both sides. My headlights barely pushed back the black. It was around midnight. The radio had stopped working an hour ago, just static. My eyes were tired. My hands hurt from gripping the wheel. I told myself I would make it home in 30 minutes and sleep for 2 days straight. Then I saw something on the side of the road. At first, I thought it was a deer. It was standing on its hind legs, which seemed wrong immediately. Deer don't stand like that. This thing was tall, maybe 6 feet tall and thin. The way it held itself looked almost human. Almost. I slowed down. The figure turned its head toward my car. In the headlights, I saw that it was covered in matted fur or hair. The color was unclear, gray maybe, or brown. The face was the worst part. It had too many angles. The eyes reflected my light like an animal's eyes, but they were placed wrong on the face. They formed patterns around our camp. Perfect circles. The thing or things had walked in complete circles around us while we slept. We left immediately. As we were hiking back down the trail, we heard the animal sounds again, behind us, moving fast, getting closer. We started walking faster, then jogging. The sounds behind us were getting louder. Whatever it was big, moving through the forest with no attempt to hide. Jake looked back. "It's right there," he said. "Oh my God, it's right there." I didn't want to look, but I did. In the pine trees behind us, something was moving. It was tall. Its movement was jerky, unnatural. But as I watched, it stood up on its hind legs and became almost human-shaped. Almost. Then it dropped back down and moved toward us on all 4s. We ran. We didn't stop running until we reached the parking lot. We threw our gear in the truck and drove away. None of us spoke the entire drive home. Marcus hasn't talked to us since that trip. He moved to California. Jake says he sees shadows sometimes when he's home alone, shapes in the trees around his house. He says he can still hear that singing sometimes, even at night in his apartment. As for me, I still hear the footsteps sometimes. They're always circling. Always getting closer. And every night when I'm about to fall asleep, I feel that presence again. That feeling of something standing just outside in the darkness, watching me, learning me, waiting for the moment when it decides to come inside. I don't know what we saw in those mountains, but I know it's still out there, and I think it's still waiting for us to come back. Thank you for listening to Fear Tales tonight. Lock your doors. Check your windows, and if you're ever driving alone at night, maybe keep your eyes on the road ahead. You never know what might be running behind you in the darkness. Stay safe out there, dears. I accelerated, maybe 60 miles per hour. I didn't look at it again, but I could feel it watching me. My hands were shaking now. In my rearview mirror, I saw it was moving, not running like an animal, walking. On 2 legs, like a person. It kept its arms at strange angles, and its head stayed twisted toward the road, toward my car, even as it moved deeper into the trees. I drove faster. The forest felt alive around me. The darkness seemed to push against my windshield. I kept checking my mirrors. Nothing there, but something felt wrong. The air inside the car felt heavier. My breathing was loud in the silence. Then I heard it. Footsteps on the road behind me. Footsteps moving fast. The sound of bare feet hitting asphalt. Slapping. Wet sounding.
getting closer. I looked in the mirror and saw a shape running on the road, catching up. Its body wasn't moving right. The gait was all wrong. Limbs bent at angles that shouldn't work. I pressed the gas pedal down harder. 80, 90. The footsteps matched my speed. They were right behind me now. I could hear breathing, not human breathing, wet, rattling, like something with lungs that didn't work properly. The sound came from the darkness right behind my bumper. I didn't want to look. I didn't want to see what was running behind my car. But I looked.
In the rearview mirror, I saw a face close to my back window. Too close. The features were shifting, like the face couldn't decide what it should look like. One moment, it looked almost human. The next moment, it was all wrong. The mouth was too wide. The teeth were too many. The eyes were locked on mine. I screamed. My car swerved. I overcorrected and the tires squealed. For a moment, I lost control. The car veered toward the trees. I yanked the wheel back and straightened it out. My heart was pounding so hard, I thought it would break my ribs. The footsteps were gone. The road behind me was empty. Nothing but black forest and asphalt. The breathing sound had stopped. I drove the remaining distance in silence, 90 miles per hour the whole way. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. When I finally pulled into my driveway, I sat in the car for 10 minutes before I could move. I went inside and locked every door, every window. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I checked my car. The back window was covered in handprints. Small handprints, 5 fingers on each. They looked human except for the nails. The nails were long and black and curved. They had dug into the glass. I have driven a different route to work ever since. I don't know what I saw that night. I don't know if it was really there or if my mind created it. But those handprints were real. They were on my glass for 3 days before I worked up the courage to wash them off. Sometimes when I drive at night, I still check my mirrors, waiting to see that figure running behind me again, waiting to hear those wet footsteps on the road. I think part of me is still waiting.
Hello, dears. Now we move to second story. And if you like first story, let me know in comment section. My family and I bought the ranch in West Texas 5 years ago. It's a beautiful property, miles between us and the nearest neighbor. Open sky, quiet land. That's what we loved about it. Until one night, when my wife, Sarah, and I were lying in bed and we heard voices outside. It was around 2 in the morning, the kind of time when you're not quite asleep, but not quite awake. The voices were outside our bedroom window. A man's voice, a woman's voice. They were talking about something, having a conversation. The words were muffled by the glass, but the tone sounded familiar. Too familiar. I got up and looked out the window. Nothing. Just the porch light casting shadows across the empty yard. I didn't see anyone, but the voices kept talking. "Did you hear that?" Sarah asked. "Yeah, probably kids from town, probably just passing by." But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't true. No one just passed by our ranch. We were too far out. The voices moved to another window, then another. This circled our house, still talking, still having that conversation I couldn't quite hear. Sarah turned on the lights. I wanted to turn them off. The light made me feel more exposed somehow, more visible to whatever was outside. I went to the front door and looked out through the glass. The porch was empty, the yard was empty, but the voices were right there, just beyond my vision, just outside. "Who are they?" Sarah whispered. That's when the voice outside changed. It said my name, exactly how Sarah says my name when she's calling me from another room. Not quite shouting, just calling, "David, David," over and over. But Sarah was standing right next to me. I could feel her against my arm. "That's not me," she said. Her voice was small and scared. Then another voice started. This one was higher. It was my daughter Emma's voice. She was upstairs, sleeping, but that voice was calling from somewhere outside in the dark. "Daddy, Daddy, I'm cold. Where are you?" Emma had never called me Daddy since she was 8. She was 16 now. She only used that word on the rare occasions when she was really frightened. Sarah made a sound in her throat, a small whimper. The voice that sounded like me started speaking now. It was saying things, personal things, things only I would know, memories, stories I had never told anyone. It was reciting moments of my life with perfect detail. But it wasn't my voice. It was close, so close, but there was something underneath it, something older underneath the imitation, something that was learning how to be me by practicing the words and sounds. "We need to call the police," Sarah said. I grabbed the phone. No signal. The lines that had been working perfectly 5 minutes ago were suddenly dead. The voices were getting louder now. More voices. There were at least 4 or 5 of them outside, all calling us, all imitating us. They knew all of our names. They were telling each other things that only we would know. "They're all around the house," I said. Sarah looked out another window and made a sound I had never heard her make before. Raw fear, complete panic. "David," she whispered, "there's something standing in our yard. It's wearing Emma's face." I couldn't move. I couldn't go to the window. I didn't want to see.
The voices kept calling. They kept calling throughout the night. Every hour, they would move to a different window. They would call us. They would imitate us. They would say things that would make my stomach twist. When dawn finally came, the voices stopped. We ran upstairs to Emma's room. She was in her bed, asleep, normal. When we woke her up, she was confused. She had slept through everything. She hadn't heard anything. We never found any footprints in the yard. No signs that anything had been out there. But sometimes now, when Sarah calls my name from another room, I have to go check that it's really her. And sometimes, late at night, I hear what sounds like Emma crying outside. But when I look, there's nothing there. My wife doesn't like to talk about that night, but I know she hears them too. We both do. And I think they're still learning how to sound more like us. The voices kept calling. They kept calling throughout the night. Every hour, they would move to a different window. They would call us. They would imitate us. They would say things that would make my stomach twist. When dawn finally came, the voices stopped. We ran upstairs to Emma's room. She was in her bed, asleep, normal. When we woke her up, she was confused. She had slept through everything. She hadn't heard anything. We never found any footprints in the yard, no signs that anything had been out there. But sometimes now, when Sarah calls my name from another room, I have to go check that it's really her. And sometimes, late at night, I hear what sounds like Emma crying outside, but when I look, there's nothing there. My wife doesn't like to talk about that night, but I know she hears them too. We both do. And I think they're still learning how to sound more like us.
Hello, dear. Now we move 3DR story. We went camping in the mountains of Colorado with my 2 friends, Marcus and Jake. We had done this trip every year for the past 8 years. We knew the area. We had our favorite spots. The camping place we chose was about 3 miles off the main hiking trail, in a clearing surrounded by thick pine forest. It was quiet, private. We liked it that way. That first night, everything was normal. We set up tents, made a fire, told stories, the usual stuff. We went to bed around midnight. I was in my own tent, lying in my sleeping bag, listening to the sounds of the forest. That's when I felt it, the feeling of being watched. I opened my eyes in the darkness of the tent. My heart was already beating faster. I told myself it was nothing, just the natural alertness that comes from sleeping in the wild. But the feeling didn't go away. It grew stronger. I pulled back the flap of my tent and looked out into the darkness. Beyond the dying fire, at the edge of the clearing, something was standing in the trees. At first, I thought it was just a shape in the darkness, a trick of shadows between the pines. But then it moved slightly, and I knew something was there. Something was watching our camp. I should have woken Marcus and Jake. I should have gotten help. Instead, I just stared at it. The shape was tall, maybe 8 feet tall. It wasn't moving, just standing there in the space between 2 trees, watching. I lay back down in my tent. My pulse was pounding in my ears. I tried to sleep. I couldn't sleep.
Around 3 in the morning, I heard the animal sounds. There was something wrong with them. I had heard wolves before. I had heard coyotes and mountain lions. These sounds were like those sounds, but not quite right. They were too varied, too complex. The pitch would shift in ways that animal sounds shouldn't shift. And then I heard something else. A voice. It might have been a voice. It was impossible to tell if it was human or animal or something else entirely. It was singing. A low, wordless song that made every hair on my body stand up. The singing came from different directions. One moment it was from the north, then from the east, then right outside my tent. I held my breath. "Marcus?" I whispered. "Jake? Are you hearing this?" "Yeah," Marcus said from his tent. His voice was tight, scared. "What is it?" "I don't know." The sound moved away, but now there were other sounds. Footsteps. Multiple footsteps around our camp, circling, moving through the undergrowth. We got up, we gathered inside the biggest tent with our flashlights. The footsteps stopped when we turned on the lights. The moment we turned them off, the footsteps started again. This happened over and over throughout the rest of the night. When morning came, we packed up immediately. We wanted to leave. We wanted to get away from this place. As we were taking down our tents, Jake said, "Guys, look at this." In the dirt around our camp, there were tracks. Animal tracks, bear tracks, deer tracks. But there were also footprints that looked almost human. Almost. The proportions were slightly off. The stride was wrong, and there were too many of them.